Raise it up. Raise it up. Chat Pro.
If I was a billionaire,
Hey guys, what's up? Alec Torelli here, Conscious Poker. Excited to do pregame with you guys. We got a cool show coming up. We got hand reviews coming on after this, and then live stream, of course, at 5, so stay tuned for that. I'm excited to be here. I wanted to say thank you, everyone, for your support on social. Really appreciate it. I did sell 10% of myself on State Kings for You Guys Have a Sweat as a thank you. Did it no markup, just as a thank you for all your support over the years. That sold out, so I really appreciate that. I'm much more, I don't know, like playing knowing that someone has a piece, even if it's $20, $100 you guys put in, that means a lot, and that's really exciting. So I'm gonna bring my best. I'm really gonna try and win, because obviously I want to win because I want to win in general, but knowing you guys have a piece makes me want to win even more. So thank you for that. That's exciting. And yeah, we're gonna be taking your questions here in a sec, so drop those in chat, and we'll pick the best ones, and happy to answer those too. What else is going on? Yeah, I'll be documenting my session too today, like I always do on my YouTube, just at Conscious Poker on YouTube, picking the best hands and breaking them down on my YouTube, just hand of the day, step-by-step format, kind of walking through my exact thought process, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is, whatever the result is. I'll do that every week on my YouTube. So subscribe to Conscious Poker on YouTube. You'll have access to that, and totally free. What else is going on? Excited for today. Got a different lineup than we originally thought, but we have a tough lineup. It'll be fun. Usual suspects. Can't talk about strategy. They're all here listening, so I have nothing else to say. But everyone's good. Everyone does things well. Everyone plays. Everyone's used to playing in these games. Everyone plays very solid. So that's going to be. It'll be a fun challenge.
the 200 is going to be on the whole time.
And Airball, I'm quoting Airball, says the 200 is going to be on the whole time. So buckle up. He's stuck from something. So yeah, that'll be fun. I mean, it's a big game with big swings, and that's always fun. I think it brings out like the coolest part of poker, when there's the pressure, the cameras, the pressure, the stakes. You know, best part of poker. So I'm really excited for that. I'm always grateful to play these games. Super excited. What else? Yeah, follow me on social. I guess you have a few minutes to enter. I'm doing a free giveaway for merchandise and a signed copy of my book if you guess my result. So you can guess negative. Unfortunately, the first session I played, someone guessed negative. They won. I honor the commitment. But whatever you guess, whatever you think is going to happen. Yeah, they won. This fucking dude guessed like negative 40K. I lost 40K. Or whatever it was. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to win, so try and guess positive. But if you guess negative and you win, I'll still send you a signed copy of my book. I'll be happy for you. Anyway, it's on my Twitter, it's on my Instagram. It's totally free to enter. Just like, tell me what result you think I'm going to have. That's fun way to engage with you guys too. I'm at Alec Torelli on social. And then at ConsciousPoker.com, we have free newsletter I send out every week for poker strategy, poker tips, hand reviews, new content. You'll also get my free hand reading system, which is like the thought process I use to make decisions in every hand I play. It's at ConsciousPoker.com. It's totally free. I'm going to walk you through that coming up in the hand reviews, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'm going to break down 3 key hands I played in previous sessions, just walk you through the strategy, my step-by-step thought process, some of it right, some of it not right, which you'll see both, some of it wrong, I should say, so you'll see both of those. Stay tuned for that coming up here at, I think that's at 3:40, I'm getting word. That'll be on at 3:40 for an hour to 4:40, and then we'll be live at 5. So good pregame coming up. I'll be back tomorrow as well. So excited to play the ante game. That'll be a lot of fun. I really like that format. So it's smaller, but it's almost like more exciting because you can play more hands, and so it's just like a lot more fun because you're in more pots. So that's like a really exciting format. Today, got to be careful. We got wizards that know what's up. So we got to be cautious. So question was, toughest player in tonight's lineup. I guess I don't know. I more think about it like in terms of where my position is relative to the other positions, and where, your stack relative to them. So like a really tough spot would be having, very like loose aggressive player to your left when you both have like 100K. That's a really tough spot, because you're always going to play worse than the person in position on you. Even if it doesn't matter if you're better than them or they're better than you. What matters is that they're in position on you and you're like 400 big blinds deep, and you're just not going to have an edge, like long term against all the hands you play against them. So that's like a spot that is the worst spot to be in, and then the best spot to be in is the opposite when you have like short stacks that are tight to your left. So like I think position draw in a game like today's game is so much more important, and I think that kind of dictates like who's able to play the game that they want to play, right? And so everyone's going to have to adjust based on what positions they're in and what seats they have. I guess that's kind of a diplomatic way of saying it, but yeah, I think I don't know. I've watched a few of this. I mean, I played 3 times now on the streams recently. I think I haven't played with Soto. We haven't played, but I think Henry's game is very interesting. It's like the most unconventional. So it's kind of like the game that's like the most like street poker. Like Henry plays some street fucking poker, and sometimes he's, when he's on and he's right and he's playing well, it's like it's very hard to figure out, what he's up to, and he's kind of capable of anything at any time too. So that's another gear that makes him tough. Airball's tough. Shaun's tough. I blasted to a Shaun last week, so everyone's tough. I blasted to Airball. I blasted everyone at some point. Yeah. So someone asked about poker in Macau. So I haven't been since COVID. So I'm definitely not the one to ask. My understanding is like they still have quarantine, or if they don't have it, they just stopped it like within the last month or something. So I'm assuming it's been quite non-existent. When I did go out there, sorry?
They ended quarantine a week ago.
Yeah, they ended quarantine a week ago. Airball just told me. Yeah, and I thought the same thing. So that was, I'm sure it was non-existent there, at least for foreigners. When I did go like right before COVID, it was just like, the landscape changed a lot. Like I started going there in 2012. And through 2016, I lived there. So I like had an apartment there or a condo there, and I lived there like as much as my visa would allow me to stay. Played a lot of poker. Even in those years, the landscape changed a lot. It went from this like, crazy, amazing gold rush with like not a lot of pros coming in because people didn't really know about it, to like being infiltrated with pros from all over the world. And it was kind of like, the people that played in their local poker economy and that played the highest stakes in those in those local places, like whatever country they were from, they would like fly into Macau. So you'd get like this amazing influx of VIPs and these, crazy gamblers that loved poker. Or some people were actually, baccarat players and slot machine players that like would want to entertain their clients, and they would go play poker to have fun. And so they'd bring like 3 VIPs and they'd show up in our game, and then they would just sit down and play, and they had no idea what they were doing. And so you'd have those players with like these ultra high net worth VIPs, and then you'd also have like the best pros from every country that would come in and like, hunt. So it was a very interesting dynamic, because you'd have to be like, you'd have to have one complete kind of unorthodox, like random strategy against the VIPs, and then like a totally different sound, solid strategy against the pros. And so it was a totally different environment, but it got a lot more competitive over the years, where the number of VIPs, for many reasons, like basically went down, and obviously the number of pros increased. And so like basically markets are very efficient, right? Like if you look at, stock market, they say it's very efficient. Like any like public market where there's access to, that's like a free market, eventually over time, like it reaches some sort of equilibrium, right? So in the beginning, there was a very, there was a big imbalance between the skill level you needed to have and the amount of money you could win. And so there's only a matter of time before that reaches some sort of market equilibrium, where it's like suddenly not necessarily as lucrative to like fly around the world and like go play in high stakes games, because like the opportunity is not as good, right? So eventually it's going to reach that saturation point. So I guess the point is that in poker, in life, and in markets, like I think you make money by being, you can compete in the games by being the best, or you make money by finding games that are inefficient and where that market isn't reached that equilibrium yet. And so that was Macau definitely in the early days, where it was like that. Now it's like, I think, at least when I was there, it was tougher. I mean, there's still good games, there's still VIPs and stuff like that. It's just not like, the glory days of Macau, I think, are gone. But yeah, it was a wild ride. It was a fun time. Toughest player I ever played against. So in Macau, I think I played against pretty much, all the superstars. But ironically, I think the toughest players were people that people probably wouldn't know. like a few online guys that transitioned to play live, but like they were just very good at like deep stack live cash games. And they had the balance between like all of the technical understanding of online poker where like they knew the right spots and the right bet sizes and the right like situations to raise and when to apply pressure, but then they also had this like uncanny ability to be very good at live poker. So there's 3 people I'm thinking of in particular. I actually don't think you guys would know the names, but they're just like very, very good at the balance between online, the technical side, and the live exploitative side. And yeah, fortunately, like when I was there, I got to, so basically like, you know, there's maybe 50 high stakes pros that are there, and there's nothing really to do. You're in like a foreign country where nobody speaks English, so I got to like spend some time with these people at lunch and like go to coffee and stuff like that and like learn from other people, and that really helped elevate my game where I was like absorbing all the content and then just playing with everybody, you know, on a daily basis where you kind of have to learn to sink or swim. That was really interesting. So I would suggest that if you find people in your ecosystem that you think are good, talking poker with those people has been very helpful for me in my career, like just to learn. So that would be a takeaway, and hopefully that helps. Favorite Italian restaurant in LA? Well, I'm actually based in Orange County, so I'm not in LA as often. I actually don't have a great spot, ironically. I mostly eat at like random health food places, which I know might be more kind of boring, but my wife and I really like to go to those. So if there's like some like health true food kitchen or something like that, I've probably been there. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer. I should find one though. If someone knows one, let me know. Send me a DM on Twitter. So I met DJF at a New Year's party recently. He was really cool, and I didn't like get to talk to him much, and I haven't really watched the Monday show, to be honest. I've seen him commentate a few times. He has his own style. It's very unique. It's very fun, very action. I just haven't studied the Monday show because like I've never played, and so like I haven't had the motivation, the incentive to like really get involved with the Monday ecosystem. I know it's its own thing. I really would like to play the Monday show though, because I think it's it's probably like the most like fun, like just hang out sort of poker vibe. Whereas like the Wednesday show, I also like it because it forces me to compete, you know, be my best, but it's a different environment. Like, yeah, it's fun, but like everyone's here to win. It's like very, you know, high intensely competitive. But the Monday show sounds really cool too. I know he's doing it, you know, obviously doing an amazing job putting that together, and you know, talented in multiple ways. So I know his podcast is really popular. I've had multiple people tell me they really like his podcast too, Sessions. So yeah, he's definitely doing impressive stuff in the poker community, and excited to get more involved hopefully in the future.
Okay, fake 1,000.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you owe me 1,000.
What is it? Whoever turns off first loses?
Too excited.
Okay. Someone asked if I would do a prop bet where I can't leave the hotel for a year for $1 million. So actually, would I do it? I can't leave a hotel room or the hotel? Like I could stay in the Bellagio, or I have to be in my room in the Bellagio? Okay. Well, the hotel and the room is a lot different. Like if I could be at the Wynn for a year, like, I mean, that I honestly don't even think that would be that. I mean, I don't want to say it wouldn't be that bad. I'm not saying I would take the bet, but like I feel like that would be something I would like think about or entertain, especially because like I'm at the Wynn, I could eat amazing food, I go to the pool, I go to the gym, go to the spa, go to the nightclub, I could play poker, I could shop. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into it not being as bad as it actually would be. It would probably be very hard, but that would be possible. A hotel room, I would not even close to ever consider. Like, I won't even do that for a month. I actually bet a guy one time, a friend of mine and I bet a guy one time, he couldn't leave a hotel room for a month. Like a room, like the actual room. I think it was in the Bellagio. This was like maybe 15 years ago or something. One of the stupid bets I made. Anyway, that was a fun time. But yeah, even that would be ridiculous. A year would be impossible. But at a hotel, if I could choose the hotel and it could be the win in Vegas, maybe. Might be able to do it. So I used to go to PCA often in the Bahamas, and when I was more like in the mode of like travel to play tournaments and like that sort of part of my career, I liked the action. I didn't really like the Bahamas that much. Like the food wasn't great. I didn't think like the locals were like that friendly. I don't know. And I know that this is like I have this very narrow perspective, so I'm very mindful of that. And people have told me that other islands are incredible, or when you get outside the main touristy areas, it's an amazing. Like there's amazing water and beaches and diving and all this stuff, and like apparently other things. I just didn't have that experience because I was like literally at the Atlantis and that whole thing. I thought like for poker itself, like, yeah, the poker is good, but for like a lifestyle vacation, I think if you're paying that kind of money, I think there's better places to go. So I haven't really gone back, and maybe I would go with Ambra now that she hasn't been, my wife. So I haven't been since we've been together, which is, I guess, dating me because I've known her 12 years. So I used to go back in the day. Maybe it's changed too. So it's been a while. Obviously, I'm kind of dating myself here. Yeah, I know the poker action is supposed to be sick, and tournaments, there's a ton of tournaments, so if you're into that, that's great. But not as much my thing, so skipped it. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so we got another 10, 15 minutes here. Then we got hand reviews coming up. I'm breaking down 3 key hands from previous sessions. So you'll see me win some pots, you'll see me make some good plays, you'll see me make some questionable plays. You guys can decide for yourself, but at least you'll hear my thought process behind the whole thing, so you can kind of hopefully better understand what how pros are kind of thinking about spots in the game and how to think through strategy and stuff like that. So hopefully I'm confident there'll be some takeaways in there, so stay tuned for that. That's coming up after this. And then we got the stream coming at 5. We got everybody in the house. Gonna have a good game. Better if I win. We'll see. Yeah. So actually, the biggest pot I played, definitely in Macau, and definitely in the big game at Star World. We played a game once where it was 20K, 40K, 80K Hong Kong, so that's like a 10K US big blind. So there must have been a hand that was like, it's funny that you think that I would like write down, oh, this broke the record for the biggest hand I ever played. I remember thinking at one time there was one that was like 1.5 or 2 million. I do remember 1.6. Yeah, I remember one hand that I lost, which was the biggest hand I lost. Of course, that's always the way poker goes. Like, if you win a big hand and it's like less memorable than the hands you lose, right? So I think the biggest hand I won was probably 2 million, but one hand I lost was definitely in that ballpark. And this game ran kind of regularly for a number of years, so it was all kind of a blur. But I had this one hand. This is so stupid. So I hadn't bluffed this VIP. It's like the biggest VIP in Macau. We've been playing a lot now, so it's kind of like, this Wednesday game, like everyone kind of knows everyone, and then people kind of adjust, and it's kind of a different thing than playing one time. It was like that for us. This was like our home game in Macau, and we literally played this game for like 2 years or something like that. So this was like towards the end of that session, right? So, or that long 2-year session. And so I really never bluffed this guy because he never really folded, and he was like the biggest VIP in the game. So I flop King 9 of spades on Jack 10-4 with 2 spades. And so I'm just like, I check raise out of the big blind, and he's in like mid position or something, and he calls, and I kind of knew that like I was getting myself into something when I check raised this flop because it was, you know, Jack 10-4 with 2 spades, and I have King 9 of spades. So I have a lot of equity. Like I have a really good hand, even if he has a strong hand, fine. But he literally plays like any 2 cards. And my read on the flop when he called, he was like hesitating about whether to call the flop or not. And so I'm like, I just don't think he has anything in this spot. And I also was like, okay, I've literally never bluffed this guy. This guy's also smart, like he's a VIP, but you know, they're very smart. And so he's like, he's not just gonna hero call me here. And even if he has something like a 10 or whatever, I'm gonna get him to fold it by the river. And even if he doesn't fold by the river, maybe I hit a fucking straight or a flush or something, or a king or whatever, right? So the turn comes at 3, no spade, so it's king, or it might have been a deuce, but it's like king, no, it's like Jack 10-4, 3, or Jack 10-4 deuce. It doesn't really matter, but none of the cards, the spade didn't come. So anyway, I bet the turn. I like bet big, I like potted here, and he calls. And I'm just like, I know he's just up to something and he doesn't have a strong hand. Like maybe he has king queen or ace queen or ace king. I'm just kind of putting him on these like big cards that are like double floating me. So the river comes a deuce. So it's like 4-3 deuce, right? So it's Jack 10, 4-3 deuce, or Jack 10, 4 deuce 3. It doesn't matter, but it's like Jack 10, 4-3 deuce. And I'm just like, you know what? I missed. I'm never bluffing here, and this guy doesn't have it, so I'm just piling in. So I pile in, and he just like insta calls me, and I'm like, wow, I was wrong. Like I'm so surprised. Like he has a set or whatever. Like my read was so wrong. Like that sucks. You know, it's big. I just remember thinking that like. I mean, I like just kind of turn over my hand. I'm like, look, you got it, and he doesn't speak English. So I have to turn over my hand, and I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, I can't believe I was so wrong, and you know, one of the biggest bluffs in my life. And he turns over ace 5 offsuit. So motherfucker calls me on the flop with ace 5. The turn, he doesn't have a flush draw. It's ace 5 offsuit. Turns a gut shot, peels again, and then backdoors the offsuit, fucking deuce, or 3 or whatever the way the board ran out, and just stacks me, and that was really tilting. Because I was like, I had the right read, and I knew he was up to no good. And like, on any other card, my bluff works. And yeah, I got wrecked. That was the biggest pot I ever lost. And I obviously still remember that one. I know I've won a few big ones too, where it went my way, but of course, those are not the hands you remember, because you know, you just expect to win when you have a big hand, and you're just like, whatever. But yeah, next hand. Do I think players who stick to game theory are easily exploitable? Well, I mean, the whole point is that if you use a perfect game theory strategy, you can't be exploitable, right? So that's like kind of like an oxymoron here. But the reality is there's a couple things. One is that nobody plays a perfect game theory strategy, not even like remotely close. And I've looked at like solvers and stuff like this, and like you know, gone in the weeds of these sort of solvers and looked at the game tree of like, you know, all the different nuances of bet sizes on the turns. If your opponent calls this flop after the flop goes, you know, bet call or check raise or whatever, and like there's just so many weird things that it does in different spots with different bet sizes with different hands, and it does it with different frequencies that it's like, it's not even like. Solvers, okay, just to kind of give you an idea of how impossible it is for a human to even play close to this, like the solver cannot even do multi-way pots because it cannot compute the strategy in a multi-way pot. So like it can't even figure out what the fuck the strategy is in a 3-way pot. There's no solver, the GTO solvers don't do 3-way pots. So to think that a human is somehow gonna memorize like, you know, millions of fucking sims in what a solver does is just like stupid, right? So it's just not gonna happen. You can take, you know, like heuristics from what a solver does and try to apply those to your game. So you can try to understand the principles of like, why does it bluff with, you know, the obvious one, right? Why does it bluff with a heart in its hand if there's 3 hearts on the board? Oh, okay, I'm trying to understand why it does that, and you can start to make inferences, and then you could apply those first principle concepts to your own game. But nobody plays remotely close to GTO. And so people are exploitable because they have inefficiencies and imbalances. The other side of the coin is that like, why would you ever play perfect GTO, right? So perfect GTO is gonna 4-bet, for example, something I always tell clients, right? Perfect GTO is gonna 4-bet with like ace 4 suited as a bluff. But if your opponent never 3-bets unless he has ace, kings, queens, or ace king, that would be stupid. Perfect GTO would do it, but it's stupid because he's never going to fold to your 4-bet. Why would you 4-bet as a bluff? You shouldn't do that. It's dumb. Don't do that. So you're not trying to score highly on a book quiz. You're trying to win the most fucking money. So playing that strategy is often not optimal. And if it is optimal, you're in the wrong game. Like if you're in a game where you need to play perfect GTO, you should quit the game and find something else to do with your time and not play that game, unless you just like the challenge. But if you like money, you shouldn't play that game. So there's not a situation where, I've never been in a situation where I've played in a poker game and I've thought about what is perfect GTO in every spot and applied that in a game. That's never happened to me in my whole life. So I hope that never does happen, because if it does, I'm not going to be playing in a very good poker game, and that's not very fun, or very profitable. So that's kind of how I think about it. I think it's super important to understand GTO. You should definitely study it and learn it and like understand what the correct strategy is in every spot, but you should also understand when and why you're deviating, and you should be deviating kind of often, I think. Oh, what's up, Ben? So Ben is in the chat, Nick. Playing check Ben is in the chat and wants me to comment on Airball's fashion style. So I think this is better. Can we get Nick in the camera here? Feldman, can you see him? Can you guys see him? I like that today he's matching. When I saw him in Vegas, he had the Louis Vuitton jacket with sandals that didn't match. Today he matches. I wouldn't wear the outfit, but I could see the style in it. I like it. I like it on Airball, cause he can pull that off. I don't know if I can pull that off. You know what I mean? Everyone has their own style. Like certain people can pull off different things.
You know what it's called, right? Tell Ryan it's called TMM.
Okay, I'm told it's called TMM.
Does he know what that is?
Yeah.
You know that is? Too much money.
Yeah,
baby.
too much money. Yeah, that's funny. Where'd you get that? Could the chat know?
It's called funeral apparel.
Funeral apparel. I'm sure someone's gonna ask, so I'm just dropping it in the chat. Funeral apparel. Ben wants to know if I'm playing GTO or exploitative with high stakes baccarat. I'm playing exploitative, which is not to play. Oh my gosh. I think I've played like one hand of baccarat in my life, to be honest. Just like I was there and I bet like $20 or something. I don't think I've ever played. I don't know, table games just don't interest me. I don't have a strategy, so it's not like fun. I like to like think about what to do. So
I have a strategy.
you have a strategy? The problem with high stakes baccarat is everyone has a strategy, but only the casino wins. So that's kind of the problem.
I think I should just never go back to table games because I'm up too much.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of memorable hands against Ben. Did he ask? Oh, okay. Feldman is suggesting. Yeah, unfortunately, I have a lot of memorable hands against Ben. I feel like a lot of them didn't go my way too. I have some retarded hands. Oh man. Yeah, we got to get a replayer up and talk about a hand next time. Maybe we'll get on the stream together too sometime. You'll see us battle. All right, we'll take one more and we go. 3:30. Let's do one more.
In Vegas?
All right, guys, one more question. And then we got post-game, the pre-game, post-game. I don't know what you call it. We got the hand review, post-game analysis, which is pre-game for you guys for my previous session. Stay tuned for that. That'll be fun. I'm going to break down some hands. Some of them are stupid. Some of them aren't stupid. Stupid because I lost. But yeah, you'll get a mix of content, strategy, insights in there. And then
Ferocious attack on you.
we got the stream coming. Everybody's ready. I feel like we should start early today, Feldman. Can we start? All right. Yeah, sure.
I was going to just sack
Oh yeah, let's get the lineup up here too. We're supposed to have different lineup, but we got this lineup. Lineups always are a funny thing. They always end up being last minute with the way poker goes. We got the usual suspects here. We got Dahl, Francisco, Airball, Shaun, Henry, myself as the usual suspects. Soto here today. You guys can see him. He's in frame. And a friend of mine who comes in from Miami, lawyer and bodybuilder, you're going to get to meet him. We connected on social, and next thing you know, we're playing in the game together. So I actually never met him. We just connected on social once, but it's cool. You get to meet someone new that follows the channel and wanted to play in the game. So he DM'd me. He's like, hey, I want to play on Hustler. I'm like, all right, well, let's go. And now he's here. So Jabral is going to be playing. I've never played with Jabral. I have no idea how Jabral plays. Maybe he's good. He might be a fish. I have no fucking clue. Maybe he's some superstar. I really have no idea. So I don't know what to say about Jabral other than the story that I just told you, which is he had DM'd me and we talked on Instagram for like a few days, and then next thing you know, he's here. So yeah, that'll be a wild card, and it'll be a good game. It'll be an interesting game, a lot of action, I think. It'll play big. Buckle up, guys. All right, guys. Shoot me a DM on social, Twitter, Instagram, at Alec Torelli. And we'll be right back with my breakdown. Stay in touch. And I'm Alec Torelli from Conscious Poker. See you guys.
Raise it up. Chat Pro. Raise it up. Chat Pro.
All right. Do a quick intro. Yeah, hey guys, what's up? Alec Torelli here, Conscious Poker. I'm excited to do our pregame today. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your attention. We're going to be reviewing some of the hands from my previous streams, so getting quite in depth about the strategy and just adjustments, playing different spots, how I kind of think about the game, and bet sizing, hand reading, walk you through my hand reading process too, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, super excited to do this. This is always a lot of fun. I also want to thank you guys all for your support on social media over the past couple weeks. I've been coming on the show, a lot of positive feedback from you guys, and so thank you for all that. And all right, let's dive in. Yeah, sure.
300. There's got to be some weird psychology there. Race.
You rolling?
1,000. I don't know.
See, now you can say Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, I did that. Well, this way you could at least say you bought drinks, whereas before you can't say you bought drinks.
I can't hear anything that's happening, by the way. You got to turn on my audio. All right, sorry guys. Can I talk to them for a bit while you fix this?
Oh, we're back over to Alec with 10.
All right, cool.
So we got
Tell
a
me
4
when it
bet from
pauses on
Dahl
me
here.
and where it pauses.
Imagine Alec will call this. Alec is just 22,000 behind. Does make the call. Pot now 8,800.
Yeah. Sorry guys, a little bit of tech difficulties. So facing this 4-bet here from Dahl. This is my first session. By the way, this hand was a couple streams ago, so I probably don't have the reads on Dahl or the experience playing with Dahl that I do now. Ironically, from what I've seen lately of Dahl, he's very solid and very tight. You guys might have seen the stream last week where he folded those queens to me in a spot where it would have been justified to go all in, I think, with queens there. It was pretty fine. I mean, it's fine to fold, but on the tighter side. So anyway, when he 4-bets here, I think overall this is going to be a strong hand from Dahl. But in this moment, I kind of felt like he was weak, and I just remember thinking like, I think he's kind of up to something. It also kind of just depended on the previous hands of the stream where I'd been 3-betting a few times in previous rounds. So maybe he just thought, I'm to his left, I'm just playing too aggressive, and I'm just raising too many hands. Anyway, I'm not sure exactly what he thought. My read was that he was weak. Yeah, sometimes I'm wrong, but I happen to be right this time. And yeah, so I think my play is pretty clear to call. Like if I had maybe, 15K or something like that, I could just kind of blast it in and force him to fold and not let him realize his chance of winning by seeing the cards on the flop and have the lead in the hand. I could just kind of force him to fold. But in case I'm wrong or the risk reward is very, it's not a great risk reward when you're jamming. I think I had 28K or 30K in this spot. So anyway, I just flat. I also keep my position. I could see what happens post flop. I can maneuver through the hand well in position, I think. And so I just call. We take a flop.
And Alec only has 19-4 behind.
Yeah.
And he's hit top set. And Dahl's got a flush draw. Hello.
3,000.
Yeah, so in this spot, I mean, a good exercise that I have my clients do is just kind of think about like what types of hands Dahl is betting here on this flop, or anyone. I mean, obviously you want to be player specific, but just someone 4-bets pre-flop and they bet a 10-7-6 board, like what are the types of hands they have? And think about it categorically too, right? So that's kind of a good exercise that people can try at home. So maybe, just kind of think about that to yourself. And so like in my mind, he has basically, two types of hands really. He has hands that are premium hands pre-flop that are now betting this flop, like jacks. Maybe jacks doesn't even 4-bet, to be honest. Maybe it does, I don't know, but queens, definitely viable, kings or aces, right? Those are one type of hand he can have. The other types of hands he has are just like bluffs, like something that 4-bet pre-flop and that did not connect with this board. Or maybe something that did sort of connect with the board, like he has ace deuce of hearts. Of course, I don't know that, but that's a bluff that he can have. Or maybe he just has something like ace queen, with one heart, and he's just basically drawing dead. So most of these bluffs that he has, right? And so if he has aces or kings, and I call, most turns are going to come and he's just going to jam and I'm going to call, right? So whenever he has big hands, I'm going to stack him by calling the flop. But what calling the flop does that raising does not do is calling keeps all of his bluffs in the pot. So because I read him as weak pre, and because his bluffs have pretty much no equity, like, I mean, yes, ace deuce of hearts has equity, but again, I don't know he has ace deuce of hearts. He can easily have ace king, easily have ace queen, or king queen, or something like that. Those hands basically are drawing dead. And so the idea behind this call here on the flop is he has more like about a pot-sized bet left, and if the turn comes, like a jack or a queen, and he has ace king, or he has ace jack, and the turn comes a queen, or the turn comes a king, or any scare card comes, or just maybe not, maybe he just just sticks it in regardless. My plan was to call here and really make my hand look a little bit weak, and let him continue with the lead in the pot and continue bluffing on various turns. So anyway, I call, and let's take a turn.
Dahl bets $3,000. Alex makes the call. There's an ace. Wow. What a run out here.
Okay.
Dahl's going to check. Alec has to be a little bit concerned, and look at this, he checks it back.
Yeah, so turn is an interesting card because some of his bluffs now improved. So like if he had ace king or ace queen, he improved. But when he checks the turn, my thought was like, if he had one of these bluffs like ace king or ace queen, like why would he check? Like maybe he checks if we have, like 100K or something like that. And he doesn't want to like pile it in on the turn when we're super deep and he's out of position. But like I have one pot-sized bet left, right? So if he has ace queen, you're sitting there, imagine you're sitting there in Dahl spot with ace queen, you 4-bet pre, you bet the flop and the turn comes an offsuit ace, like you're just piling in. Like I could have, a 10 or jack 10 or 10-9 or I could have jacks, or I could have queens, or I could have kings. Like, an ace is a very good hand in this spot on the turn. So when he checks, I'm not really putting him on an ace. And again, most of his aces are drawing dead anyway. So if he has ace jack or something and he checked it like oddly, or ace 5 of spades and he checked it, you know, those hands are dead anyway. But I also didn't really put him on hearts here. So he has hearts, but it's really hard for me to put him on hearts just because, like, when you have hearts here and the turn comes, you want to be betting. Like, most of your heart draws have no showdown value. So you don't want to check and then let me bluff, and then what do you do with hearts? Like, you have to check fold. Or you don't want me to check and then the river comes and then you can't bluff me off the pot. So, of course, it's different with specifically the ace of hearts. Like, I understand this check on the turn with his one specific hand. But if you look at all the types of hands he can have, you know, this ace X of hearts play is a very small part of the overall construction of the types of hands he can have. So you know, what I'm trying to focus on in spots like these, and I think this is hopefully instructional, is like, you want to be playing your hand against all the types of hands your opponent can have and not be so worried about, well, what if he has this one specific type of hand? So because the information is unknown to you and you have to play against a lot of different types of hands your opponent can have. Some of those are strong, some of those are weak, some of those have some equity, like this hand has some equity, others have no equity, and others have, you know, a little bit of equity, like if he has pocket kings, right? He has a very small amount of a chance of winning. So you have to construct a strategy that is optimal against all the types of hands they can have. And so my thought here was, like, if he has jacks, queens, or kings, and I jam, he might fold. And if he has a bluff, he's still in really bad shape. Like, even if he has king, queen, like, he's drawing to 4 outs, he's drawing to a jack, you know? So if I check behind this turn, I keep all of those bluffs in the pot, right? My read again was he was weak pre, so if he has some sort of weird bluff, I keep that bluff in the pot, and if the turn goes check, check, maybe he will jam the river with that bluff. Like king, queen, maybe he gets scared on the turn, he doesn't want to stick it in, you know, if I call the turn and he has king, queen, he's basically drawing dead, so he doesn't want to do that. He checks the turn, I check behind, and then he's like, you know what, I'm going to rep that ace on the river, and he piles in on like a random river. And that's very good for me, because I want him to continue bluffing. I also thought if he did have an ace, like let's say he magically had ace king, which again, I don't really see a reason for ace king to check this turn, but people play hands differently, and that's part of poker. Let's say he checks his turn with ace king, I check, the river's a 4, what's he gonna do? He's gonna pile in and I'm gonna call, or he's gonna check, I'm gonna pile in and he's gonna call. So either way, I'm gonna win against those premium hands. So I'm really not worried too much about like getting money for value if he has one of these premium types of hands, because I only have one pot size bet left. I'm going to get that on the river. So my basic, again, my strategy here was to, what's up, Ariel? My strategy here was basically to play against his bluffs to try and win money against those hands. And what's up, Shaun? And yeah, that's why I checked this turn. So anyway, I check. Obviously, if I knew he had this specific one hand, I would bet. Like knowing he has ace deuce of hearts, the correct play if he tabled that hand face up is obviously to bet. But again, I'm playing against all the types of hands he has, and I can't see his cards. So I didn't know he had that hand. Anyway, I check, and let's take a river.
He has no idea his opponent's this strong. And the heart comes. Oh, my.
All you can eat.
And there's all you can eat.
Yeah, so he piles in. In some ways, this is a bad river, right? Like if he had a magical heart draw, which again, I kind of discounted those hands on the turn just because I think all of his hearts are going to shove. But if he did have hearts, I lose. And it is hard to have hearts in a 4-bet pot because you have to be bluffing pre-flop to have hearts, because no hearts like 4-bet for value except maybe ace king of hearts or maybe ace queen of hearts. So it's hard to have hearts because you know you need to be bluffing. And if you could be bluffing pre-flop with hearts, you could be bluffing pre-flop with spades or diamonds or clubs, right? You can have all the other bluffs too. So he could have a 9, like, you know, if he was bluffing pre, like maybe he has queen 9 suited and just like check the turn because he's like, okay, well, this is a bad spot. Maybe he has jack 9 suited, maybe he has king 9 suited. Those are definitely possible, but again, you can't have it both ways. If he can have like a random 9 then he can have a random non-9. Like he can have queen jack. If he can have queen 9, why can't he have queen jack? Or if he can have hearts, why can't he have spades? So you kind of can't have it both ways. Like if his range is wide enough to be bluffy pre and bluffing on the flop or whatever, then he can show up on the river with bluffs. He didn't have a bluff this time. He obviously had the nuts, and that's fine. And he played it fine. Well done, Dahl. Like he played his hand fine given the specific hand he had. But my thought was like, trapping against his bluffs, which I read him as weak pre, and just like trapping against his bluffs was my strategy on the turn. So when he jams the river, is it my favorite card? No. Like I would have liked a fucking 10 to come, or the board to pair, or like a deuce to come, just because like there's fewer hands he can have that now improve to beat me. But at the same time, if he is bluffing, this is like a perfect like scare card for him to bet. Like if I have, my hand looks like a 10 or pocket jacks or pocket queens. Like if I have jacks and he bombs this river, like I just beat nothing. So with a set of 10 specifically, I think I have too strong of a hand to fold in this spot, and given like my strategy and the way to play it, I opted to call. I do wish given that I knew his specific cards, I obviously wish that I like could have raised the flop or just jammed the turn or something like that. But that's part of poker, so live and learn. This was a very interesting hand. Obviously, like I almost want to say it was a fun hand. Like aside from the fact that I lost $25,000, like it was a very stimulating, interesting hand, and I've thought about it quite a lot since then. And so it's just like I like spots like that in poker where I can learn something. And like for me at this point, like if I can learn something at poker, I consider that a win. And so I like to be in spots that are challenging and then stimulating. And then I learn something, and then I'm always humbled. Like sometimes I make mistakes, and sometimes things don't go my way. I don't win every pot, and so this was a cool hand. I got to reflect on it and talk strategy with some people. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Feel free to share your thoughts with me on social at Alec Torelli. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Very active on those mediums. More Twitter, but yeah, come say hi. Yeah, sure. Let's go. Yeah, so this next hand is an interesting spot, and I think it's a case of also being in tune with the game and knowing your player and knowing the situation. And it's not necessarily a play I would make all the time, but then the nuances of poker are that you make these individual isolated plays that you only make in certain spots because you read the situation really well. And I think in high stakes live poker, that's what's so exciting about the game, is that there's all these individual nuanced spots where every hand is unique. So let's dive in.
That rain has been all snow in Utah and Colorado. I think Utah's gotten something like 7 feet over the last.
Oh, yeah, you're already there. Okay, so Tuckman's talking about snow. Okay, so Tan raises in early position, and he's a very tight, solid player. And Sammy, who's also playing solid, calls directly to his left. So you have two pretty strong types of ranges here. You have like an initial raiser who's playing very solid hands, and then you have Sammy who's aware that the initial raiser is playing solid hands and still calls in the worst position to call from, which is where you have everyone else behind you who could potentially 3-bet or call and squeeze you out of the pot. So you have a very tight range raising, a very tight range, aware of the tight range, and calling. So in a spot like this, I would rather play my 9s for like set value, and also like I keep my position in the hand by having the button. But I really don't want to get 4-bet here because I kind of have too strong of a hand to fold, but it's not a great spot to call because then I'm basically effectively only playing for a 9 post-flop. So I much rather have like Dahl have something like what I hope he has, which is like aces, which he doesn't have, but like repping those types of hands pre, and then just being able to call. And also I keep my position. So in a single raised pot, when you keep your position on the button, that's a pretty good spot for you because you can like play the pot multi-way. If someone in the blinds comes in with a lower pair, that's not a problem for me because if like I hit a 9 and they hit a lower pair, like you can flop set over set. Like good things can happen when you have these decently high pairs. And so I think this hand plays better as a call. If the situation were different, like let's say the positions were different, hypothetically like hijack open, cutoff call, and the players were also different. So the person who opened in the hijack was a different type of player, and the person who called in the cutoff was also a different type of player, I might actually then re-raise with these 9s because I would play them for value, hoping that someone would call, knowing that the types of hands they're calling my re-raise with are still worse than 9s. So it's not like so black and white here with like you always play, people always ask me like, because these middle pairs are kind of like tricky hands for people, and they're like, okay, what do people typically know what to do with queens, kings, aces. You're going to re-raise with those, and then people typically know what to do with like 5s or 6s. You're going to just call with those, like they're not good enough to re-raise, and then maybe they fold their 2s and 3s. So like they kind of know what to do with the bad hands and the really good hands, but these middling hands like 8s or 9s, especially 10s and jacks, like those middling types of hands. I mean, I hope this isn't like a frustrating answer, but like the way to think about it is there's not really one strategy for how to play them because the elements and the variables are always changing. So I always try and encourage like my clients to think from like first principles and say like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Who do you want to play the hand with? How deep are the stacks? And like how strong are the players in this pot, like from a tactical standpoint, and also how tight are they? So how strong is their range for opening here, or are they likely to call you if you re-raise them? So you want to think about all these different variables and then come up with an individualized solution for like what the best play is in the given moment. So, in a different moment, I might re-raise with these 9s, and in this spot, I just opted to call for the reasons I said. So I hope that gives you some framework for how to think about it. And I take a flop. Let's go.
3 weeks. So I'm super excited to be out there.
Good price, 200. We flop 2 pair.
Ace 9, ace jack, pocket 9s. Nice flop for 9s. Torelli in the lead here.
500.
Zach Nawabi says, when will Suited Superman play? He's been on the show a couple of times. I want to say probably 3 or 4, right?
Heads up.
Yeah, so this is, again, another one of those spots that you're going to get frustrated at me, but it's sort of like a variable spot, right? Like, even if you look at what like a solver would do here, like if you plug this into a computer, like they're going to be raising this flop some of the time for protection. They're going to be raising for value. So one of the challenges with this hand is there's not like a extremely straightforward way to play it. And so again, you want to use like the individualized variables that are present in this moment, what you know about your opponent, what you know about your own image, have that self-awareness to know like, are you being, are you going to get credit for a raise? Is your raise going to look bluffy? Is your raise going to look strong? Are they going to be folding strong hands? Are they going to be 3-betting you on a bluff? Like, you want to be thinking about all these types of things and asking yourself these questions before you decide what to do with a hand. And you typically want to have a reason for why one strategy is better than another. So for example, if I were going to raise this flop, I would raise this flop for probably one of 2 reasons. The first reason I would raise this flop, and if you, and I don't want to pretend like I know what the solver thinks, but as I interpret like experiences in running with using game theory, like a solver would like to raise this spot because if your opponent has like king queen, they have 2 overcards and they still have like a 25% chance of winning, which is pretty high. Like, you're not, you're never like having your opponent drawing dead when you have 9s here. Like, they typically either have you in bad shape if they have like an overpair, or they have 2 overcards. So one case for raising is like, I want to force my opponent to fold if he has 2 overcards, or if he has ace king and he doesn't believe me, I force him to put more money in the pot with a worse hand, and I take the lead away from him so that he's not going to bluff me on later streets. That's one reason for raising. Maybe it's not, maybe it's not the end all be all, but it's a case. The second case for raising is like, if you think that with your image and with the level that your opponent is on, that they're not going to think that you're capable of raising this flop without a set or air, then adding strong hands into the types of hands you're raising with, like 9s, could trick them. They might not believe you that you have a hand because you're basically saying like, I have a set and it's hard to make a set, so they might try and represent aces and go for a re-raise, like a 3-bet on the flop. That's a little bit more high level of a play. You need to have a specific read and a specific image and a specific opponent that's capable of doing that, but you might want to raise here to like induce them to bluff you, right? And that could get very complicated because if you get that read wrong and they actually have aces and they re-raise you back, like, you're just basically piling in chips when you're drawing dead. So that's not good. So you really want to have like you want to think about these sorts of things. I can't tell you what to do, and I try not to I try not to coach that way, like where I tell people what to do. I try and tell people how to think, and like how to think about what the best strategy is depending on your situation. Because the reality is, if you're playing, whatever, 2-5 in Texas or 5-10 somewhere or 50-100 somewhere, like your game and your players and your strategy is going to be a lot different than my game and my players and my strategy. So like saying that you should always do one thing in one spot to me is just kind of stupid, because that's not how I try and approach live poker, where my goal is to like exploit other people. So anyway, in this spot, given my read on tan, I think calling is better than raising, and it could go either way, like I said, but he's a tight, solid player. I don't think he's going to get terribly out of line, and I also think he still could easily have a big pair, and that's a decent part of his range given how tight he is. So I just want to call for pot control. I also keep my position. I make the hand a lot easier to play too, just keeping my position on the button and keeping the pot a lot smaller. So anyway, I call, we take a turn.
They're telling him to wait.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, look at this. Tan sticking around for whatever reason. There's only 2 aces left in the deck, right? And he hits one of them on the turn. Really unlucky for Torelli and his.
Yeah, so turn comes an ace. Obviously not a good card because a lot of his bluffs contain aces, right? That's just, hopefully that's kind of clear. Like he can have ace 5 or ace 3 or just like ace 9, obviously. But even better aces like ace 10 suited, or all the offsuit Broadway aces like ace jack, ace queen, ace king. All those hands now have completed to hit an ace, and that sucks for me. So I think I would probably be folding here more often, but his bet size was pretty small, right? So he bet 700 into 2100. So if you break down that math, which is you're getting 3-1, you need 25%. You only need to have the best hand 25% of the time, or you can also hit a 9 to improve your hand. So you don't always need the best hand 25% of the time, but maybe something like 20%, because some of the time you're going to hit a 9, and when you do, you're going to win a lot of money. So anyway, it's not that high of a frequency. It's not like I need the best hand 90% of the time or 80% of the time. It's not like he potted it and he's representing a lot stronger hand with a pot size bet, and I need a better hand a lot more often. So this is more just like of a math kind of play. Like there is, if he was bluffing, this is still a good card to bluff. Like if he did have king queen or jack 10 or queen jack or like, whatever. This is a good card for him to bluff because it's easier for him to have an ace than it is for me, and people like to bluff the ace. So maybe he's going for like some like little feeler bet here, just trying to get me to fold like pocket 6s or pocket 5s or pocket like a 4. Maybe there's some chance he's betting an 8 too. Like there's some non-zero chance he's betting an 8, like just has like, 7-8 suited and just like doesn't know what to do and just bets 7. Not I don't want to. That sounded like I was throwing him under the bus. Not that he doesn't know what to do, but just that like he's kind of in an awkward spot, and rather than checking and facing a big bet, he's like, well, I'll just set my own price and bet like 700. So maybe 5s would be a fold here, but like 9s is a little bit stronger, and yeah, you also have overcards on some of his bluffs. So if he was bluffing with like 6-7 and you have 5s, like he has a lot more equity. But when you have 9s, like if he hits a pair of 6s or a pair of 7s, like you're still winning. So 9s is a lot stronger hand. It doesn't sound like it because it sounds like he has an ace or nothing. But if you look at all the hands, those little things add up, I guess, in spots like these, especially when it's close, especially when you only need 25% to break even. Like having that little difference between 5s and 9s is kind of like, okay, well, fine. There also is some opportunity to win the hand on later streets. So we'll talk about that in a second. But in this, I'm gonna kind of like preface something that we're gonna talk about on the river here. But basically, like what I'm doing in these spots is I'm really trying to just narrow down the types of hands that they can have using a methodology that I invented called a hand range funnel, which is basically this idea that like the hands that your opponents can have starts very wide. Like, when they're dealt in, they can have 100% of hands, right? Like someone's dealt in third position, they can have 7 deuce, they can have aces, they can have anything in between because they're dealt 2 random cards. But as they start to make decisions and take action, right? Like they raise pre-flop, suddenly they can't have 100% of hands because, 9-4 offsuit doesn't raise pre, jack 5 off doesn't raise pre, ace, like whatever, king 3 off doesn't raise pre. So when someone raises pre-flop, like Tan does in second position here, or first position, his hand range goes from like 100% of hands down to like whatever his pre-flop raising range is under the gun. Let's call it 15%, 20%, 12%. 18%, something small. And so on the flop, you're taking his pre-flop range, which is whatever hands he's raising with pre-flop, and you're asking yourself, okay, what types of hands from his pre-flop range is he betting this 8-4 deuce flop with 2 people behind him? Is it 100%? Maybe he bets 100% here because the board is kind of innocuous and he has the lead. Maybe not. But whatever hands he doesn't bet on the flop are discounted from his flop range because he bet the flop. So if he wouldn't bet the flop with, I don't know, Jack 10 offsuit, then he can't have Jack 10 offsuit on the flop because he's checking. So because he's betting and he would have checked with that hand. So when he arrives on the turn and the turn's an ace, you have to ask yourself, okay, like what types of hands is he raising pre, betting the flop, and betting the turn with? So there's not, like, you could really start, and that's why I call it a funnel, because funnels start very wide. Like, you know, when you pour water into a funnel when you're baking a cake in the kitchen or whatever, like they start really wide at the top of the funnel and there's a lot of room to pour the liquid. But at the bottom of the funnel, as you get down towards the turn and the river, the funnel gets narrower and narrower. You're discounting hands from your opponent's range, and you could really start to pinpoint the types of hands they have. So that's why I use this methodology. It's why I teach it to, you know, thousands of clients and students, because it's like a lot easier for them to just conceptualize the process of what you have to think about when you're putting people on a hand. So in this spot on the turn, I basically put him on like an ace or a bluff, and maybe some random middle hands in between. Like maybe sometimes he has an 8. But there's not that many types of hands he's going to have here and show up with on the turn. He's probably not going to be betting jacks or something like that on the turn, just because like that hand's more likely to check. So because he would not bet the turn with jacks, when he bets the turn, he can't have jacks, and you discount that hand from the funnel, and so you remove it from his range. So yeah, anyway, in this spot on the turn, I just wanted to kind of preface that with like you guys understanding like how to think through this conceptually, because analyzing individual hands is helpful, I guess, but it's only really helpful if you're taking the concepts from the hands and then you're applying them to your own game, your own strategy, your own ability to hand read later on, because no 2 hands are the same, right? You're not going to be in the same spot I'm in this game. So you need to understand the first principles and how to think so that you can apply that to your game. So anyway, I called the turn, and let's take a river where things get interesting.
This kind of nightmarish evening continues. Just very unlucky.
Check.
Wesley Moran asking if I'm going to snowboard. Yeah.
Yeah, so can you put the funnel up really quick? Okay, yeah, cool. So this funnel, again, it's I didn't mention it, but it's free to download at consciouspoker.com. You can just go to consciouspoker.com. It's free. Enter your email somewhere, and I'll send it over to you. It's a 7-page PDF. It kind of like it walks you through this exact process and how to apply it to your game. But basically, on the river, you know, when we get to this point here, like what hands, using that hand range funnel, right? What hands is he raising pre, betting the flop, betting the turn, and checking the river? So like, my thought is like, if he had some super nutted value here, like he'd probably be betting this river. Like if he backdoored a flush, first of all, I have the 9 of hearts, which is good. It's called a blocker. It means it's a card that prevents my opponent from having the type of hand that I'm thinking about. So it's less likely he has a flush because I have a heart. But that aside, if he had king, queen of hearts here, he's probably going to bet this river because like it's likely I'm going to check behind and he wants to get value. So when he raises pre, bets the flop, bets the turn, checks the river, now you can discount a lot of the types of hands that would have bet the river for value if they were strong, because he checked and he did not bet. So using that hand range funnel, I'm narrowing down the types of hands he can have to either really 2 types of hands. One are just bluffs that are giving up, like king, queen off or whatever. And the other, which is more common, I think, is probably a hand like an ace. Like a random ace that's like what he has, ace 9. Again, I can't see his cards. I don't put him on ace 9, especially because I have 2 9s, but even ace king, it's all the same thing in this spot, right? Ace king is either ahead of the types of hands that I'm going to bet the river with, or it's ahead of my bluffs, or it's behind my value. So I decide to bet 6,000 here on this river into like 3,800. And when I make an overbet here on this river, I'm representing a very strong hand. I'm representing like a flush or a straight, maybe a set or 2 pair. So I'm not representing like, you know, like 1 pair. I don't have an 8. I'm not betting with an 8. And so I'm either bluffing, and it's hard to be bluffing, right? I called the flop and I called the turn. So if you use that same hand range funnel on my range, what types of hands am I calling the flop with and calling the turn with that have not got there on the river? Like everything got there. The straight got there, the flush got there, and the ace got there. So like, what am I calling the flop and turn with that missed on the river? Like, there's not many hands. Like, I'd have to be turning a made hand that has showdown value into a bluff. And most people don't do that, and I don't think he's gonna put me on that. And so in this spot, it's basically like, I think that betting here is good because I think he's gonna be folding a hand like an ace. It puts an ace in a very tough spot. Like, and yes, I am bluffing with this one possibility of nines with a heart, but like, even if he knows that I'm bluffing some of the time here, I don't think I'm bluffing often enough in this spot for him to call with an ace. So even if he knows that Alec might be bluffing, he could potentially bluff. Like, I have a lot of the strong value hands that that I'm representing, like a flush or straight or two pair or set or something like that. So ace king is basically a bluff catcher, and because I don't have many bluffs, I think that hand is gonna fold. And because I think that's the majority of his range, I think I'm gonna get a lot of folds here on this river if I go for a bet. I could just check and hope to win at showdown, but you know, that's kind of more relying on luck, in my opinion. You're kind of relying on him bluffing and just hoping that his hand is the part of his range that's weak and that your hand is good enough to win. But I think what, you know, that next level is saying, okay, like I could hope he's bluffing, or I could take the initiative and bluff myself and force him to fold and win the pot regardless of what he has. And that's where I think, hopefully this is illustrative of how you can find edges in spot where other people probably aren't, because like this is, you know, an example of where you take a non-conventional line, a non-standard line, and you force your opponent to fold the best hand. And you know, that difference between checking and losing like a, you know, whatever, a 4K pot versus betting and winning a 4K pot is an 8K delta. And if you do that once or twice a night, and maybe, you know, you're not playing games where there's 8,000 in the pot, but this hand is still 40 big blinds, so you know, whatever size, you know, $400 in a 5-10 game, you know, if you do that a couple times a night, that's an $800 swing. And if you do that twice a night, 3 times a night, that's a couple buy-ins. And you don't have to make that many good decisions. You just have to find the right spots and pick them. So that's kind of, you know, where my focus is in these games, in these spots, is situations like this. So I wanted to illustrate this, and hopefully the hand range funnel is helpful. You, again, download it at consciouspoker.com. It's totally free. I'll send it to you. You'll also be subscribe to our newsletter. We send out a couple emails every week for like new content and poker tips and strategies and stuff like that. It's all free. So check that out if you like this process. I hope this was helpful, and let's move on. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I grew up skiing.
I'm so focused on the strategy.
And
hand.
I grew up skiing my whole life. And then in my late 20s, I went to Tahoe with a bunch of buddies, and they were all like, try boarding. And I tried it. First day was kind of rough, and then like end of day 1 of snowboarding, I was like, oh man, this is fun. And I have literally never skied it since. So yeah, I got the snowboarding. I went out and bought myself a board.
Cool, so that was a fun one. It's always fun when, I think one of the really cool things in poker is when you have this idea in your mind of like what you think is the right thing and you have a read, and then you guys can probably relate to this too. There's a big difference between having a read and executing on that read. Like, and a lot of people say this on the river. You might have heard this. People say this like, oh, I knew you were bluffing there. And it's like, well, you know, why did you call anyway? Or like, I knew you had a strong hand. It's like, well, why did you call the river? It's like, because knowing the right play, and I always tell this to clients, knowing the right play and making the right play are two very, very different things, especially as you increase the stakes and the pressure. It's a lot harder to make the right play in real time. And it's easy to know the right play in retrospect, right? Especially if you can see the cards or like, you know, you see the results, it's obviously easy to know the right play. So anyway, I kind of live for these moments in poker where I'm either learning something, like we talked about in the previous hand, where I can learn something new, I can raise my level of consciousness and I could grow as a person, as a player, or I get this like, you know, I get that high of like, I read it right, I executed right, I did it right, and it fucking worked, right? Because sometimes you do it all right and the guy calls you anyway. Like if he called with an ace there on the river, I would still feel like I did everything right, but I didn't get rewarded for my play because he made a call that like was a great call, or maybe he shouldn't have made that call, and that's really frustrating. But anyway, this hand, you know, everything went right, and that's a great feeling in poker. It doesn't happen, you know, we live for those moments that are few and far between. Anyway, let's go.
That's right.
Every culture eats meat.
5th grade level.
Less meat than the average.
Yeah.
And you know, Dahl says, if you eat it, I'll eat it with you.
You know why? I didn't understand what you're talking about. It might be.
I'm sorry. You're too easy of a victim.
I know.
8 high flop here. 10s are good.
Yep, so pretty standard here so far. Not going to belabor this too much. I raise with 10s, early position, pretty standard. If anything, you know, Henry maybe could argue for a 3-bet here with ace queen in the big blind. That would be like reasonable, but I guess calling's also fine. This is like pretty standard pre. And then post flop, you know, 8-4-3? 8-4-3, yeah, sorry, I don't have the hand in front of me, guys, so sorry about that. 8-4-3, and he checks. I make like a small-ish bet. I think here on this board, I guess the only thing to note is that I think sizings could go either way. I think you could actually incorporate small, like small by small I mean like a third pot, normal by like 2/3, 3/4 pot, and large, which I consider like pot or over pot. I actually think you could probably do all 3 sizings here, just because like this board is very good for me. As the pre-flop raiser, I basically have a lot more of those big pairs than he does because he didn't re-raise pre, and also because I'm in early position, so a larger part of the types of hands I have are stronger hands, which means more of those hands that I have are like 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, kings, aces, and less of it is like bluffs. Like if I were in the cutoff, it's a little bit more dicey to overbet here because yeah, I do have the stronger hands pre and he doesn't, but I also have a lot of bluffs, and so you want to be cautious when you're betting big. That you're not betting with too many bluffs because your opponents can just call you, and we'll talk about that later in the hand. But again, this is a great spot for me. So I'm going to be betting here very often because this board is very good for me. It's very dry. And I have what's called a range advantage, meaning the types of hands that I can have are stronger than the types of hands my opponent can have. And so this is a good spot to bet. I chose a smaller size here. That allows me to basically bet with more hands. When you bet a smaller amount, your risk reward is a lot better, right? Like I think I bet 400, the pot is like 1,200. So I'm basically risking 400 to win 1,200, and I'm sorry if that math is wrong because I can't see the exact size of everything, but I basically bet small. So I'm basically giving myself, the principle remains, I'm giving myself a better price on my bet. It doesn't have to work as often, and that's a good thing in poker when you have an advantage in the hand. So anyway, this is pretty standard. Let's go to the turn.
Henry, gonna take at least 1 off. See if you can hit an ace or a queen. Does not.
Yeah, so this is like actually an interesting spot here. This turn is kind of like not as good as the flop in the sense that like it's probably easier for him to have like 7-4, 6-5, 8-7 than it is for me. So this turn actually kind of makes like some of his hands better than mine, and so that's a little bit risky. But at the same time, it's like I'm gonna want to bet this turn with some bluffs. Like if I have 9-10 or Jack-10 or like a random, like maybe Ace-5 is a bluff, like a double gutter, or you know, you just want to give him to fold a pair. So I have to kind of balance those things, right? Like, yeah, this isn't the greatest turn, but at the same time, if you, and I feel like a lot of people are on this. The reason I wanted to highlight this hand is because a lot of people are focused on what could go wrong and the negative, and so they'll be like, oh, I'll check this spot because like, what if he has this? And it's like, okay, well. It's kind of like saying, you know, oh, I'm not going to like, whatever, do this thing in life because it could go wrong. I'm not going to ask this girl out because she can say no, right? So people are, in life, a lot of people are focused on like what can go wrong and the negative. Whereas I think in poker, hopefully and in life too, like the strategy is to optimize for the best case scenario and the most likely scenario, right? So if you ask a girl out, she says yes, she could be your wife. That's a very high asymmetric thing. But also in poker, like if you are concerned about being beat here, yeah, there's a couple hands that beat you, right? Like you can have 8-7 or 6-5 or 7-4, something like that. But most of the hands don't beat you, right? Most of the hands are 8-9, 8-10, 8-jack, 8-queen, 8-king, ace-8, or like pocket fives, or 4-5, or 4-6, like 7-6, 7-5. Like there's so many hands that don't beat me, right? So if you're checking, you're kind of optimizing for this like fear-based sort of approach where you're like worried about these couple things that could go wrong. Instead, what you should be doing in poker, in my opinion, is you should be focused on all the things that could go right. And you should be optimizing for the most likely scenario and the best case scenario. And the best case scenario and the most likely scenario is I have the best hand because I have 10s and he's in the big blind, he can have anything. And the other most likely scenario is I bet and he has an 8 or like nines or a 7, and he just calls because he's like, well, Alec could be bluffing with 2 overs or like a random bullshit bluff. So that's my focus in a spot like this. Is like, and then I think to myself, like, if I get check raised or he calls me and there's a bad river, like, I'll cross all those bridges when I come to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on catering my strategy to the most likely scenario. And so that's why I like betting here in this spot on the turn. It also makes me a lot harder to play against. If you're only betting this turn with like super strong hands and bluffs, you're just probably bluffing too often and you don't have enough strong hands. If you're not betting your over pairs, you know, you're probably not betting this turn often enough. So it's a tougher spot to play, but I think it's a higher expectation spot, right? So anyway, I bet 1,200 and let's go. I got it. I'm learning. Yeah, okay, so again, using the hand range funnel that we talked about in the last hand, it's like, let's go through it, okay? He calls a raise pre in the big line. He check calls the flop, he check calls the turn, and he checks the river. So what types of hands are the most likely hands he has? The most likely hand he has is an 8. Like the 8 is an obvious type of hand. So, you know, 8, Jack 8, Queen 8 suited, King 8 suited, Ace 8 offsuit, Ace 8 suited. Like those are all possible hands. Those are all the most likely hands. And if you look at all the ways he can make all those hands, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of, you know, 8, 9 offsuits, right? All those 8, 9 offsuits, 8, 10, all the 8, 10 offsuits, 8, 6 suited. Like there's a lot of those types of hands. So that's my best case scenario. That's my most likely scenario. And then the question just becomes like, what do we do in this spot here? And so what types of hands am I representing here when I bet the flop, bet the turn, bet the river? I'm basically representing a hand that can beat those hands. So I either have an overpair or I magically hit like a straight somehow. Like maybe I have, you know, a straight or a set. I have top set and turn river to boat. But like I basically have an overpair or better, or I have nothing. All the nothing missed, so, you know, Jack 10, 10, 9, Ace 5, all the nothing that I could have. Random bluffs, maybe King Queen is just bluffing because I'm putting pressure on the big blind, trying to, you know, utilize my pre-flop strength and my range advantage. So maybe I have random bluffs too. All those bluffs missed. Not a single one of those bluffs got there. So when you're representing very, very strong hands like overpairs, those are very, you know, few and far between. There's not that many of those. No, I think it's his. Yeah, sorry guys, we got salmon and vegetables here. It's important. Thank you. Yeah, so when you're representing super strong hands, like, you know, nutted hands or premium value, you know, very good hands, and you're also, of course, representing bluffs, you want to be betting bigger. And if I were to bet small here, like, whatever, the pot's like 3, 4K, like, well, the pot's 42, 4,400, I think. If I bet 44.75, yeah. So if I bet, you know, 2K here, 3K here, it's pretty easy for him to call with an 8, right? Like, yeah, he loses to my overpairs, but he beats all of my bluffs. He beats every bluff I can have. So he's getting a good price, he's getting good pot odds, and he beats all my bluffs. So if I'm betting small, it makes it very easy for him to kind of create a solid strategy just by calling down, and I'm probably going to be bluffing too often because there's not that many strong value hands, and I gave him a very good price. He's just going to respond correctly by calling the river, and it's easy to play. So instead, in a spot like this, it's a really good spot to overbet because I am still representing all those super strong hands. He can't really have any of those. I guess he could have like backdoored 7-6 and, you know, backdoored trips or something, or been trapping with 6-5. Sure, again, like if you're catering your strategy to the worst case scenario, you know, you're missing value, right? You're under like optimizing for your correct play. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Fuck my life. Anyway, so there's some part of the time I'm beat, but like 90% of the time I'm gonna have the best hand here and the correct place to bet. So I decided to use a large bet sizing, which I think puts him in a lot tougher of a spot. Again, it makes the hand a little bit harder for me to play if like he has me beat or he raises or something like that. Like it's a worse spot for me, but it's a higher expectation spot. And I think in poker, when you're playing, especially higher stakes games, and you're playing against better players, you're playing against them often, it's really important to like be difficult to play against and put them in very tough spots and like play your range and play the situation how it needs to be played, and not just be only trying to optimize for your one individual hand or worried about some bad case scenario. You're just going to make yourself too straightforward, too predictable, too ABC, and too easy to play against. Now, this doesn't apply if you're playing in like a 2-5 game and with a lot of recreational players that like are not adjusting and they don't know, they're not thinking on the level that we're talking about here, and like they're just never going to call a big bet on the river. Then just bet as much as they're going to call, and that's the simple way to adjust to exploit them in this spot, right? But I think Henry is a very, he's a very good player. He's capable of, understanding a lot of the things we're talking about, and he's capable of hand reading. He knows that, like, he knows what types of hands I'm representing. He knows that I could be bluffing. He knows I could bluff with this size. He knows I'm going to be balanced, and so it puts him in a tougher spot overall, and it basically forces him to call 6,000 instead of call like 3,000. So I basically double my profit when I have these strong hands, and I double the likelihood that he folds when I'm bluffing because I make it twice as hard for him to call. So it basically benefits my strong hands when I bet bigger, and it benefits my bluffs. And so it's just a lot better of a play overall for my entirety of the types of hands that I have. And I think that makes me a lot harder to play against. So yeah, all part of the hand range funnel. And I think if you use that funnel and you apply it to yourself and your own game and your opponents, it'll definitely help you at hand reading in poker. So let's see what happens.
And Torelli overbetting the pot here. He bet at 6,200 into 44. And Henry is at least intrigued. We saw how long it took him to fold the queens earlier on. And he's contemplating a call here with ace-queen.
He seems happy. This little dude.
Tens. Good.
Henry pays him off. Torelli wins a nice little pot.
Yeah, so again, this is kind of what we talked about last hand, where it's like one of those spots where, the difference between a standard bet of 3K and an overbet of 6K is 3K, and that's 30 big blinds in this game. So, if you find the spot last hand where it's, 4K one way versus 4K the other way, and this is a 3K additional win that is over the standard sort of sizing, like, again, you add up a couple of those spots a night, and then you're in good shape. So that's kind of how I like to think about it, is just like finding creative edges in spots where they're underfound or underutilized in the game or in the collective, and that's kind of where your edge is. So hope you enjoyed this. Come say hi at Alec Torelli at social media, just Alec Torelli on Twitter and Instagram. More info at consciouspoker.com for the hand reading system and our newsletter. Stay in touch, some premier products there as well if that interests you. And yeah, we'll have the game coming up very soon. We got the lineup for today. Okay, you got the lineup up. Okay, cool. So we got Nick Airball, who just is here. Shaun Brown Bala is here. The usual suspects. Francisco, another usual suspect. You guys all know him. Tall. Christian Soto. Henry's back. Pepe's back. Jabril, who is a friend of mine, reached out to me on social media, and we connected. Been following for a while, and we connected recently, and he's in town from Miami, so he'll be playing today too. So yours truly, and yeah, a lot of usual faces, a few new ones, so it'll be an interesting game. I think it's a tough lineup. I think it's like the Wednesday lineup's a bit tougher, and also like, Jabral's new this week, but he's obviously not new to poker, so we'll see how he adjusts, how he adapts, and also a lot of it's about the seat draw too. So I think, different players on your left versus different players on your right is a completely different strategy. The buy-ins and the chip stacks, and you guys, maybe seen in recent weeks, my chip stack in particular has moved up and down a lot, and other players too. That kind of changes your strategy as well. You have to be mindful of like, how deep you are versus the other players. But everyone's a contender. Everyone does things well. Everyone plays their own game well, and I think anyone could win. It's going to come down to who wants it more and the cards. And there's a lot of variance in the game. It's a big game too, so we'll see for that. But definitely, it's one of the more challenging games, and everyone's very capable. And the point I was making is that like everyone's played this game so many times that no one's like afraid of the stakes or afraid of the camera or afraid of the other players. Like everyone's willing to like play their game, make moves, and play just try and play the hand the best way possible and put people in tough spots. And so you're going to see a lot of that, and so that makes everyone a threat. And I think you have to be keep your feet on the ground, stay mindful, stay present, and stay grounded, and really try and bring your best showing, because you're going to need it to win in this game. So it'll be interesting. Excited to play. Yep. So we got stream starting soon after this. 5 o'clock. Stay tuned. We're gonna rock it out. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks for your support. Come say hi. I'll see you on the stream. Bye, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this.
Raise it up. Chat Pro. Slow roll. Never fold. Raise it up. Chat Pro. Slow roll. Never fold. Raise it up. Chat Pro. Slow roll. Never fold. Slow roll. Never fold. Slow roll. Never fold. Raise it up. Raise it up. Chat Pro.